It is a privilege to be a woman, to be gifted with the ability to nurture new life and to be entrusted with the responsibility of being a conduit through which the next generation springs forth. That's truly a blessing. As we commemorate International Women's Day, we have so many reasons to celebrate. Within us lies a profound strength and a sacred mission. There's a fiery force intrinsic to our being that drives us to manifest our fullest potential in the world. We embody influence and authority as women. Our lineage traces back to those brave, resolute women who were vibrant and fervent in their journeys. Despite confronting many challenges, pain, struggle, these women continued to rise, passing down an inheritance of unwavering strength and the ability to not just survive, but thrive through it all. This is the power of womanhood, and we're celebrating that today. This is Her Seat at the Table. Welcome. So I think I'll start by introducing myself to the panelists and to you. My name is Babi Muloy, and I have been a television and radio host for over 20-something years. And for me, having a seat at the table means having a voice. My passion is asking questions, hearing people's stories, and being able to bring that as the power that I have to the table. So we'll go around as the panelists, and I ask you to give us a short, sweet introduction to yourself and how you feel about having a seat at the table. Wasima, we'll start with you.
Cool. So I'm Wasima Miller, and I am the founder and CEO of Timo Digital. But I think first and foremost, mom of three. That's one of the top achievements and hardest things that I do. Mom of three, committed wife, ex-theatre teacher, so drama queen. And everything in between.
Brilliant.
And I think I'll share a lot with you throughout the day in terms of what this seat means for me.
Well, I absolutely cannot wait to have your contribution. Charmaine?
Thank you, Pabi. I'm Charmaine Houvet. I have over 30 years in the ICT sector. I am a consummate networker. So I love networking, love collaborating, bringing people into spaces. And most importantly, I'm all about leaving a legacy behind, investing in young women and developing them to take over the reins so that I can retire hopefully in the next 5 years.
Brilliant. Dr. Ntombi, welcome.
Thank you so much. My name is Dr. Ntombi Muchakwane. I am an entrepreneur, passionate about health technology and more recently, healthcare ICT. I have a passion for networking, a passion for bringing young people and exposing them to health technology in particular. I am passionate about the healthcare sector and just making sure that we bring the necessary change and also just recognizing the strength that women bring, in that change within the healthcare sector. Thank you.
My name is Marilyn White-Khadebe. I'm founder and CEO of Soma Solutions. I also identify as an entrepreneur, and a champion really of women in ICT. And for me, really, with 20 years of experience within the ICT industry, her seat at the table is about saying to many others starting out that you too can have a seat at the table ultimately.
I mean, I think a through line that I'm hearing is the passion not only for what it is that you do as entrepreneurs, but also for handing that baton over, being an example to the next generation. And it ties in a lot with our first topic of conversation. It's about authentic acceleration and progress for women's issues in modern day Africa. Now, this requires a comprehensive and multifaceted approach that addresses the root causes of gender inequality while promoting women's rights, empowering the inclusion across all sectors of society. You know, the time for talking and training and women's upskilling and interventions, that time has passed. True equality would not ask of women to prove anything in order to be given access to platforms, opportunities, or to have their voices heard. So with that in mind, we're talking about meaningful and sustainable change. And that comes from the inside and from the outside. So I'm going to start with you, Charmaine, and talk about from society, women in leadership. Is society ready for women to lead?
You know, I just look at some of the women that I'm fortunate to call my tribe in my circle, and I see how they are leading, and they are forcing society to, have to contend with them leading. I think of somebody I'm honored to call a sister. I'm honored to call a mentor, Irene Shanley, a former activist, somebody who boldly takes up spaces. She doesn't need permission from anyone to lead. She was former president of International Women's Forum, very powerful voice of women everywhere. I think an outlier in terms of collaboration, bringing women into spaces, very decisively and boldly going out and raising funds to actually intervene when it came to GBV, and actually spearheading the catalytic strategy, pulling in powerful companies to actually, approach the JSE and say, no, actually, we are actually clear that it's 50% or nothing. You've got to bring women into the boardroom. And by the way, we're not asking to be invited. We are inviting ourselves. And if you don't give us a seat at the table, we'll bring our own chair. So again, I think of another very close sister and friend of mine, Cindy Koyana Mabaso, who a few years ago started the African Women's Chartered Accountants Association. And very interestingly enough, they one of the few sectors who today have reached parity. And I was talking to Tash Uester, who's actually the founder of the Innovator Trust, who brought together all of us to have this seat at the table, which I'm so honored to have. And Cindy actually today started AIH as one of the few funding organizations who is ensuring today that if you are a chartered accountant and you're a Black woman, you don't have to go out there and look for your own money. Again, she went out there and opened up a space. Another woman I'm honored to call friend, Funeka Mutajani, who's actually the retail head of Standard Bank, going out there, taking up spaces. The first Black woman who, like me, the president the other day spoke about tin swallows, and many of us at the table are tin swallows, myself included. I was raised in a social grant by my grandmother. And Shamla Chetty is the first woman of color and the first woman of Duke corporate education based overseas who took up space, and many told her, I don't think you can have that seat at the table. Nolita Fakuda, the current president of IWFSA, who's the first Black woman of Minerals Council. So again, women are out there taking up spaces. Are they in enough spaces? Absolutely not.
So is that what it is in your view, Dr. Ntombi?
Indeed. And it's also just us inviting each other. As Charmaine said, she has these mentors, who also helped her and catapulted her and invited her to the table. I'm here because I got invited by, a lady in the Department of Health who said to me, there is this, and I know you, so please, advance. And I think that I look at the boards that I sit in. I sometimes find it sad that it's men who invited me to those boards. And I'm asking that of myself to say, if this is what I'm finding, what am I doing therefore to change what I see as a status quo that has applied to me? And therefore just paying it forward to say, may I bring more people? May I be that conduit? Because, in looking in myself and knowing what I can do, I then also say, but, Charmaine is here, Marilyn is here, we're women, we bring up children, we're strong. And it starts there, understanding our own strength and noting that strength in each other, and then calling each other on to say, hey sis, there is that table there that needs a fellow sister. You know what I mean? So in that doing, we're not waiting for others to call us, but we're calling each other and affirming each other in doing so.
That's the word. affirming each other, because so often you'll know what you are capable of, but having somebody go, sis, I see it in you, and bringing you in makes all the difference. So perhaps you can tell me about any initiatives, grassroots projects that you're aware of. I'll come to you, Marilyn, that you know are making a tangible difference towards the lives of African women.
Absolutely. It's all about a pipeline. And the programs that are out there, there's, for instance, the Girl Code that's out there for school-going girls. And I know the likes of Prof. Rulin, who's responsible for work-integrated learning, that I also work with closely. She's responsible, and her passion really is about ensuring that graduates from TUT basically get hands-on work experience from first year, and that's what she's pushing for, because traditionally you'd give them hands-on experience from final year. That's how it's structured. And she's partnering and looking at ways in which we can do that. And one of the things is that we particularly did and are looking at exploring is in terms of providing the female graduate, because what we find is that the female ICT graduate tends to take on the softer roles, like the training in ICT, instead of the more technical, hardcore roles. And just finding out, based, and the Leaky Pipeline report that we issued in 2020 highlighted that. So just finding and creating a space in terms of understanding why is that, because we all went through graduate school, gained the same competencies, but women tend to lean more towards the training and the softer. And as a female-owned ICT company, you see it play out. Even as female-owned ICT companies, whereby a lot of us, when we engage our corporate counterparts, are like, I need for example, a Microsoft certified company. And you'd find there's a lot of us, but we don't have the Cisco certification. We don't have the Microsoft certification, yet we've been in that ecosystem. So realizing the importance of not focusing on just the resourcing, but actually rolling up our sleeves. Yes, the opportunities are there. Many of the females I've engaged are looking and are encouraging us to really gain the technical competencies in what we say as females in ICT, and honing that with the natural creativity that we have as females. So the rooms are there. It's about navigating and finding out where the gaps are so that we can be impactful.
I love that. And I see you nodding, a very big, responsive nod.
Yeah.
The technical aspect, rolling up your sleeves and getting involved.
Yeah.
I mean, you're graduating this year, Women in Tech, and you've been so successful, having won several times at the Women in Tech awards with the Innovator Trust. Talk to me about that aspect of actually just getting into it and showing what you know.
So I think, one of the wonderful things about the Innovator Trust as a platform and, like incubation programs and being at tables of influence is that suddenly you were in there, focused on your mission, and suddenly somebody is shining a light on your progress. So I think what I want to share is in terms of everything that we've achieved so far, my approach to change is very different. I think there are those big moments, but they are exceptional. So winning, awards like Top Achiever for Women in Tech.
Yes.
I think there are those moments. It's not going to happen to everybody. I think it's defining moments in terms of how the role that we have to play, but not in terms of the role that the whole sector or all women have to play. We have to push success for me is defined by the smaller incremental changes, And I think if we measure or take South Africa as a pilot, from where we've come from. We've broken generational divides in terms of bridging the gender divide. I think there's a big success story. I know we focused on what we still need to do, but there's a huge success story if we take those small wins. If we take the fact that there's a female platform speaking about tech that we are, airing on Women's Day, I think that's huge. And we mustn't minimize the impact of that, because there are so many other women starting out in the industry and girls watching us. So I think that's where we have the biggest impact in terms of making the change. And our responsibility is really about giving the language to those girls. That's the big thing that the table represents. Besides the opportunities that we've spoken about, I think being able to sit around the table with women, and I said this earlier as well, if you're the smartest person in the room, leave the room, and I'm not leaving the room today. So being able to be influenced by this panel, just listening to some of the conversations, getting another way of describing the conversation, a different language for articulating some of the concerns that we've picked up in the ICT sector. That is the benefit of a table like this. And I do believe that we need to bring more girl children and boy children, younger people into the room, so that they can get that language, so that they understand what's the language when I go back into school, when I go and speak to my friends. So when they eventually get to the point where they are being interviewed, or when they are being, sitting on another panel, or make it to a board, they confidently sit there, being able to articulate what their vision is, understanding how to get there, and understanding that change doesn't happen overnight. But let's not lose the wins that we've made, because when we articulate the wins, when our children speak about the wins, it gets them more motivated to work towards the bigger vision.
True. I loved that so much. I'm even tempted to ask us to go around and tell me about some of the wins, some of the differences that you've seen from perhaps when you first started studying, when you first had a curiosity about tech, or when you first started your entrepreneurial journey to where we are today. Because I do think it's important. We so often think about what's still left for us to do, but we've come a long way, Doctor.
We've come a very long way. Consider the fact that I'm trained as an emergency medical doctor, right? But I've transitioned into healthcare ICT. You know what I mean? So, it is a big leap if you think about it, because and it's also just a fusion of clinical work and ICT. So also just merging of the two industries. But not only that, just the training thereof. There are not enough training centers where we look at healthcare ICT. So we do also need to create those platforms to bring people along, by way of training. So I think, technology and just how technology merges also into other spheres, and technology as an enabler of the different aspects of the different verticals within society. So indeed, we've come a long way. And whoever thought a doctor would be looking at, IT as well? And I think we need to celebrate that. One. But two, also bring more clinicians, especially nurses, because yes, we create these platforms, but who are we creating them for? We then need to also go and create an enabling environment and teach them, so that as we create these platforms, they are ready to be received by the people that we create them for.
Fantastic. Meredith?
Sure, we've made great strides from where we started off. I remember in the early 2000s when I worked, the first female I saw really doing what I hoped to do was Irene Chanley. And she was one of the few people within the ICT space that I said, oh, wow, great. Right now, to 2024, Microsoft, we have Lillian Barnard. SAP, we have Koliwe. Cisco, we have Smangel. IBM, we have the country, I can't remember her name. country MD is a female as well. So strides we've made at that from our ICT sector perspective. Secondly, as our Chief Information Officers, Head of Technology, we have the likes of Faith Byrne, we at ESCOM. We have the likes of Unati at African Bank. There's another Unati at EdCorp. And the list goes on. There's the likes of Katie Lee. So Katie is deputy chair of the GTO, National Government Department's GTO. Lots needs to still be done in that space, but we know them, we see them, they are there. And in terms of, female entrepreneurs, there's also Ms. Koliswa Kekana, who's also at UJ. And then there's the layer of us, myself, Wasima, Ntombi, that are coming out as female entrepreneurs, way more female entrepreneurs than there were previously, where we only had Irene and Koliswa to look up to as females who started their own IT enterprises. But there's a whole more. Like I have a women in ICT group where there's a whole funnel of them, like the likes of Yolanda that is coming up, the Chantal Govenders that are coming up as female ICT entrepreneurs. So the future in ICT looks pink. We just need to keep on doing what we're doing because, for the next generation to think ICT is when they see us and they hear us and they know that we are the tin swallows who come from rural areas, who come from townships and have overcome and are now having a seat at the table.
Oh, that's so inspiring to think about from whence we come as well. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the importance of engaging with our male counterparts as allies, because this is often a part of the conversation, right? I mean, we talk about gender norms and stereotypes that are very, very harmful. And I wonder, from a mentorship point of view and a leadership point of view, how do we assist those around us to kind of let go and shed those male stereotypes? But Wasima, I also know that you're a mom of boys,
Yes,
right?
I am.
As am I, and many of us are. How do we start repealing some of that toxic masculinity as the youngsters come up?
So that's a huge question. I'll take a part of it,
Sure.
but I think it's an important one. So, I mean, the way I had to break that down for myself, because I see a lot of women rising to these powerful positions, and the PhD syndrome, the puller down syndrome. There's the let's attack them because they're being masculine and they're giving male energy, and they're being, they're not utilizing their nurturing side, and there's that whole view on it. And I the way I had to break it down is like, we are dealing with a set of behaviors. It's not a person. We're dealing with a set of behaviors that have come on for centuries, a set of behaviors that have been associated with masculinity or men purely because they were in positions of power. And so when a female goes into that position of power and adapts those behaviors to their spaces, we automatically assume they're trying to be like men. So I think firstly we need to break down that perception, because my spirit animals are people like the COO of Old Mutual, who is a female, and she'll stand there stern with her jeans and a jean jacket, and she will look like a male, like take the persona of it, demand the room, but she's being a human in power, in a position of power. So I think let's just break it down. Let's not associate anymore masculinity and femininity to power. So I think that's the first thing. And that's how I play it out in my household as well. Both my husband and I have equal roles, like in different things. And actually, honestly, he cooks the most and the most amazing stuff as well. So like those typical roles we need to dissociate with gender. I think that's number one. So in my household, we need to do that. And we also need to stop putting the responsibility on men to act in a certain way and to show up for us in a certain way. If we want to take on that power, let's not have that, that pressure that we apply. So I think it starts there for me. Let's break down what those gender norms are. And when we bring it into the workplace, let's understand what the behaviors are. And when we recognize power and when we recognize women that are trying to own spaces, let's help lift them up instead of break them down and not call out that this is a gender thing. I think our boys, and this is why I was saying, when I was growing up, the places that we learned our values was not in the workplace. The places were in church, in community centers, in like spaces where we played in the road, like wherever, and I know now with the younger generation, I speak as if I'm like of oracle wisdom age. But like with, my nieces, my nephews and younger people, they don't have that. But there's a false sense of confidence. Like when I look at the TikToks and the Instagram, there's a false sense of confidence, which there's a positive side because there comes radical confidence and clarity in terms of the message they're trying to push, but they are still suffering because the value system is not clear. Like somebody's telling them, you need to push out this message because you are a female and you own a company and you need to own your brand. You are the brand. So that parallel processing doesn't happen. I suddenly have to step into this big role, but mentally nobody's equipped me for it. Like, what does this mean in my household? What does this mean in my role, in my relationship with my partner? Like who do I suddenly, can I still be vulnerable? Can I still, go on that journey? Yeah. So I think the gender, we have to fill that gap. We have an accountability to fill that gap in terms of how who we bring to the table, and it's not just us. Growing up, I wasn't privileged to sit around the table having dinner with my family because in Afrikaans we say "'n kind tel die tande nie," or that's actually like more Afrikaans, but it means don't count my teeth, you're a child, like go do children's things. So I think the shift is let our children sit at our tables with us. Again, it's about the language. What's the language we're equipping them with? Regardless of gender, because they're so woke these days that gender is not a thing for them.
Exactly.
So let them sit around the table, let them understand that what the language is that you are going to be speaking when you walk into a room again, when you walk into the classroom, when you're engaging with your friends. And when I invite you over to dinner with my colleague, you can still sit at the table and have that conversation with us. Let's equip them like in our spaces and not leave the responsibility with schools or other institutions.
Fantastic. Shame?
I think what's interesting for me is how often I hear so many individuals take offense when you say, let's go through this training. And immediately, as individuals, we're like, oh, there you go again. Like, why do I need additional training? It's very interesting. We've just gone through a program. It's some of the give back work we do. Myself and Irene Shandy and Shamla Chetty and a few other really amazing women. And the one thing that's interesting, we find a lot of these women are highly, highly qualified. And when we say we're putting you through a course in training, it's not academic training. And it's interesting how we find through this process of 1,000 women, how at least 90% of them are so socially awkward. So it's interesting how many of us have not tapped into our social networks. So there's a lot of social norms that we've been raised with that I often sit back and I look, and one of the courses I actually give my time back to is called Social Intercessions. And I think it's exactly what Wasima was saying. When we grew up, one of the strong, one of the glues that kept us together were our society. So you knew who your neighbor was, you knew all of those little things that kept you together, and you knew who to go to when you were in trouble. I think similarly, we took that with us throughout. So when I came into the workplace, I figured out very quickly that, okay, that's the person in charge. This is the person who's not in charge. And I figured out as I went along who I needed to go to for certain things. And 30 years later, by the way, I'm still in touch with each and every one of those people. I haven't gotten rid of any of them. They're still in my database. I still get in touch with them and say, happy birthday, how's your daughter, how's your wife, how's the grandkids? And I think people have forgotten that. And I think we have become so woke that we've now labeled everything. We've become so alive to labels that we have forgotten simple things like, this is my mentor, and this person has got a role to mentor me and to teach me the ropes. This person is a coach, and let me hang on to them and let them point out things to me when I'm not doing what I should be doing. And so I think that role of mentor, that role of coach, that role of sponsor is something that's so important. And for me, men, women, everybody has an equal role to play. And again, what we're forgetting is that the people who run this economy are still the men. And the people who we need to bring along in these conversations are the men. And the fascinating thing for me is that people don't go and seek to find out who's in the room. People do two things. Either they go in the corner and they'll talk to their best friend. And we all love our best friends. Like, I love my friends. Like, I could leave my husband and move in with my friends if the opportunity ever arose. And they sit with their best friends, or alternatively, they're going to go and find out who they believe is the person who they heard or read about, who they think is influential, which is often not the person who is influential in the room. And so I see how people always get that wrong. People are always going after the wrong person. So people are not going after people and opportunities that matter. And that's where people get it wrong. So one of the things that we teach on as part of this course is social intercessions and social capital. Your network is your net worth. Sometimes we also have to just have honest conversations with ourselves and say, it is what it is, And I think one of my mentors, Dr. Omar Rasataba, who's now at the NPA, sat me down one day and was one of the most, I think, it's the conversation that took me a long way, and it made me a lot of who I am. I was still very young, had my head in the clouds, just getting married, was very senior in the organization I was working at that time. I was part of the top 25, and there were about probably 65,000 of us in the organization. So being part of the top 25 was very powerful. And so from the top 25, I was going to move into the top 7. And it emerged that for me to get into the top 7, there were 2 women who were very opposed to me getting into the top 7. And they would have done anything in their power to stop me. But be that as it may, she came and said to me, look, you have to get into the top 7, and we're going to do everything in our power to get you there. But you also have to do certain things. The first thing you have to do, I see that you're wanting to get married. I see that you've got, hearts and Cupid bows in your back and hearts in your eyes. But you also have to contribute to certain things. You're not going to be this woman who, picks up kids and drops off kids and who has to go home and cook and who has to, fall pregnant and get sick. And I thought, this is so offensive. Like, whoever has this conversation with men. But then I woke up very quickly and I thought, actually, you know what? Don't be that woman who falls into a pity party because you don't have a wife. If men have wives who are going to fall into that role, then you know what? Be the woman who educates other women. This is a woman who's taking time out to educate you. So therefore, get your house in order. And she said, Mrs. H, get your house in order. Make sure you have somebody to fill that role. Don't be late to an exco. Be there before everybody else. Stay until midnight. Do those things. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but you're in a race here and you want to get to the top. So get into the race. Don't leave before you are ready to leave. Are you ready for this race? And I said, I'm ready for this race. And I don't regret that because I got into the race and it taught me about social capital. And she said, it's almost like running for a presidential election. If you're going to get into that race, find out who's making the decisions, convince them that you need to be in. And if you don't want it, I think that's also okay.
Yes.
If you don't want to do it, that's also okay. But I wanted to do it. But there were certain things I had to change. And so I was not one of those moms who picked up kids. I was not one of those moms who said, I'm not one of those moms who cook. I'm not one of the moms who take care of a home. I'm not one of those moms who keeps home. I'm hardly in the country. Somebody said to me at a meeting the other day, welcome to South Africa, Charmaine. It's lovely to see you back in country, So, but again, I made that choice. And I think, again, when you look at a man, when you look at a woman, when you look at anybody, I think choose how you integrate them into your life. I don't look at them as man and woman. Just look at them. Is this a sponsor? Is this a coach? Who is this person? And how am I using them to become part of my narrative and my journey? And when they're part of that narrative and they're part of that journey, how do I then ensure that part of the social capital and the social intercession, I am going to reach the end. And through my reaching the end, I use them to empower and leave a legacy to make others' lives better.
That is so powerful. You've really said a mouthful there.
Mm.
Picking up from some of the aspects that Wasima was talking about, because being so gender focused also adds to that PhD thing. If you've made the choice to be a certain kind of mom or be a certain kind of wife, that's perfectly fine. And that's important to be able to stand in your decisions. Your final comment about this, because there's so many things that have been brought up here about allyship, gender, having people on your side to mentor you, and the idea of networking and building community.
Sure, absolutely. Even from the answers and the responses from everybody, it comes down to it's a personal journey, and what speaks to you as an individual, as Marilyn. So what works for Ntombi may not work for me. What works for me may not work for Ntombi or for Charmaine. So it's absolutely vital for us to self-introspect and make that conscious decision that Charmaine did, that I'm going to be this, and find peace in it. And it's also okay that for the next 5 years, so I'm in this season right now whereby I realized it's a season, life is a journey, right? So I'm in the season now of building. I come from a period whereby I had an au pair, and that experience made me realize how detached I became with my children. And for instance, where my daughter would reach out and say, "Mommy, can you please come with me to the doctor?" Like, in the affirmative, like, yes, I get. And you realize, oh, there's certain things that as parents that can't be outsourced. I've also recently become aware that we need to parent. We need to go back to the values, right? That we were raised, but to parenting. And it's not about, so it's different hats that we wear, and finding the balance. I don't have it yet, really, but finding and being conscious about it, that, look, I'm in this season where I realize I want to be active in their lives more, and finding the right balance. There isn't balance, they say, but making it work. What works for me and my family and my children and my own personal goals. That, because honestly, at the heart of it, if I don't feel fulfilled, if I don't have joy, it spills. They say you end up bleeding onto everybody. So as a leader in my organization, how do I need to show up for my employees? How do I need to show up in terms of creating that net worth? What do I need? So it's all about, this is the season I'm in. 5 years from now, I may be in a different season, see things, and it's okay.
I love that. Something that really liberated me about balance is that there isn't balance. And so wherever you are, be there.
Be present.
So I'm not taking my script writing or my invoicing or my planning to playing on the carpet with the Legos. When I'm there on the carpet, I'm there. When I'm in studio, I'm here. And it's a practice, it's a muscle, because it's also easy to multitask, but that's something that's really, really liberated me. After this, her seat at the table continues as we discuss the intersection between women and technology.
The world of AI and what it can do in transforming even my business offerings is very exciting for me.
Welcome back. Now, as Africa strives towards building a digital society that's inclusive and equitable, the active participation and leadership of women That's essential. It's crucial to recognize the unique contributions, challenges, and opportunities that women bring to the table. By addressing barriers, fostering empowerment, and promoting inclusivity, we can harness the full potential of women in technology to drive innovation, economic growth, and social progress across the continent. So in our next topic, we're going to be delving into the intersections between women and technology in Africa and exploring the impact of building a digital society driven by women. Now, you know, the Innovator Trust has always been incredibly strong in advocating for the future of tech being powered by women. And I love that. So, you know, let's talk about an African digital society driven by women. Is this possible? And practically, how can we get there? Let me start with you, Marilyn.
It's definitely practical, and how we can get there is through the introduction of tech. Now we live in the time of AI, where, you know, we're looking at low code coding, programming, and that gives room for so much creativity, and it's going to make it so much easier to offer the girl child, the boy child in the rural areas, in the township areas. It's going to be so much easier to offer and expose them to the world of technology, but not from a consumption perspective, but also from them being able to see how they can create using technology. And AI is definitely a great entry point in ensuring that the African child does not get left behind in the season of digital transformation of our African society.
I love that you say that, not from a consumer point of view, but also as creators. Talk to me, Wasima, about the African digital society driven by women. Future thinking, what does that look like for you?
So I think, like, for me, the starting point is there's a lot of, we come from different sectors, like technology powers different sectors.
Yes.
And I think the starting point for me is also to say, yes, we are working towards that, you know, kind of borderless continent that's technology enabled, but we need to curate what that story looks like, that journey looks like, and what the vision is. Because I think it's so important. Like, I was listening to some of the conversations on the panel today, like medicine, for example. Like, I'm not sure that I understand what technology's role in medicine is in the future. So it would be really great for us around the table and our networks and the female groups to come together and say, in ICT, to come together to say, what do I want technology to do for our sector? So that, putting that story together, that vision together, is more important for me as a first step than actually putting the technology in place. Remember, technology is an enabler.
Yes.
We could use any tool. Like, and just like historically, when the car came around, we made a decision to stop walking more and start using, you know, like the car more. There were impacts to that. So I think the same year is to say, if we're going to use technology more, let's understand the purpose, why we want to use, what we want to use technology for, so that we also understand that when we go on that journey, the unintended consequences are things that we can deal with, like who are we leaving behind on the journey, which African countries can we actually learn from, because I can tell you in North Africa, there's a lot of lessons to learn in the tech space, because there's less barriers, less red tape for technology enablement to happen. And I also think one of the things that we need as women in the ICT sector is to say, what is the story that the data is telling us, so that we can use that story to curate this vision. For me, if the vision is clear, we need to come together to create what is that vision for the future look like. That's our responsibility now, because otherwise we're building piecemeal things, technology things, enablers, and not going on a joint journey. If we can it's the one of the project management 101, like one of those ways that you say, how am I measuring success? I can't measure success if I don't know what I'm working towards. So I think the first thing is, as an African continent, let's get the players around the table to come together and say, what do we want technology to enable on our journey, and what is that vision? If we don't understand what technology is meant to do, we become mindless consumers. We don't take agency in that.
So I'm going to take that question and add it to where we are currently. Like if we look at the state of the nation, as it were, the JSC, entrepreneurship, women in these spaces, what are the barriers? And then what types of innovation and tech and, creation can happen to move us forward, Charmaine?
So, if I look at the continent as a whole, I'm going to build, I love what was said. So first and foremost, what we love to do as Africa, and again, maybe in certain aspects, please excuse me, I'm generalizing. But when I sit in a lot of these spaces, again, I love observing. And I actually served on the President's 4-Hour Commission, and we had put forth some recommendations in terms of what needed to be done. And then again, I serve on a few UN boards, and I travel to the continent all the time, and I sit and I also actually advise many presidents on how they should actually craft a few policies and how those policies need to be adopted and implemented to actually accelerate digitization in their respective countries. And what always fascinates me is that the first thing you do when you sit with a leader, you say, what would you like to achieve? I would like to be the Silicon Valley of X. I would like to adopt a model from Dubai. I would like to take, and by the way, my company is actually based in Silicon Valley. So I know a lot of what happens in Silicon Valley. In Silicon Valley, what many people don't understand, it's a thought. It's a process of, this is how we work here. So I think before we try to actually be like somebody else, I always ask the leader, so what problem are you trying to solve? What are you trying to solve? So what I'm trying to solve in Wentworth, in my township where I was raised, would be very different to what a leader in Rwanda who had a genocide is trying to solve, where I came from in Wentworth. Two very different challenges. And therefore, technology's got less to solve for me in Wentworth than a president in Rwanda would have to solve for genocide. So if I look at, for example, how Rwanda is using drones, they're using drones to actually transfer blood in some of their rural areas, which is difficult to actually get by with cars because it's such a hilly mountainous area. So they're actually using technology in a very different manner than I've actually seen drones. Here in South Africa, we're using drones to actually play around with it and maybe to take photos for weddings. And yes, there's also other very serious things that we do use it for. But for the majority of the stuff, it's a fun thing. Again, what a lot of us don't understand, we tend to believe that when we talk fintech, we get very excited about fintech. We're like, oh, have you heard about? But many of us forget that M-Pesa is one of the most successful fintech stories in East Africa. And why did they solve? They actually started fintech because they wanted to solve an issue and a crisis in terms of entrepreneurs needing money, and you need it today. There was no time to go to a bank. And so there was an unbanked situation, and then they were addressing that unbanked situation and needed to be addressed. Another situation that I find many people in the West, in Africa, are solving, and I love how the minister is actually solving this issue. Dr. Bosun Tajani is doing a great job in Nigeria. He's found loads of open spaces everywhere, and he's decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of these spaces that are white elephants. I'm going to work with corporate companies. I'm going to put loads of technology into these spaces, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to find entrepreneurs. I'm going to find people like Charmaine who's got time on her hands to come here and teach others. I'm going to fill the space up, and I'm actually going to train these entrepreneurs and citizens. And once these citizens are trained, they're going to take this out into spaces. So people are not sitting there and thinking, I'm going to try and develop something that's going to go to the moon. People are solving things that are addressing their everyday issues. And that's what I think is going to be the next sort of catalyst for humans. I mean, you find in for example, simple things that women are doing. And I always say to my husband, I think why people struggle in life is because you sit every day and you scratch your and you think, how can I make loads of money? We're all sitting and thinking, how can we make it? Whereas some people are thinking, how can I survive tonight? So in Tanzania, all that women are doing, they are using solar panels, and they go out into rural areas and they have connected solar panels, and they are charging phones for construction workers just so that they can make extra money in charging phones. Some are actually, building little containers, and in the containers they've actually got seeds, and then they have an online bank where you can actually order seeds off them from online, and then you order, and there's little markets that they have online. So people are actually, they innovating, not because they are trying to copy anyone. They're innovating because they are understanding that there is a need. They're filling an immediate need. And I think that's the next thing. They're not innovating because they're trying to go to a company to say, what I often get people saying to me is, oh my goodness, I started this company and corporates are not helping me and I'm all alone and I really need somebody to fund me. And I'm like, yeah, okay, but what need are you actually trying to fill? So that's where we actually find ourselves right now, which I do believe is a shame.
Can we go back to AI and the impact that AI will have on accelerating women's seat at the table and how we influence tech? Wasima?
Yeah, so AI, I must be honest, I want to call out as well in our company. I don't believe we build cool stuff. Meaning, to the points that we've just made now, we build things that our clients need, and and it's very purpose driven. So, in a lot of the corporate spaces I've been working in, I think AI is only starting now to emerge, and one of the biggest things that come from it is how do we use AI or the data, the aggregation of the data, to help us identify like where in a hiring process there are gender biases that pop up, for example, or like they use it for those types of things. We're not at the point yet, or none of the organizations I've worked in are at the point yet where we're using AI to automate, to build on stuff. I'm not sure in South Africa what the context, what the AI, like where we are in that space, but I do believe there's a big opportunity for us to identify and use the data that comes from it. But I do want to say, like, we've got a long journey to go in terms of AI, and we are not consumers of, like, I am. There was a call to action last year from one of the big corporates that we work for to say, start using ChatGPT. So I was like, okay, cool, I'll start using ChatGPT. What I quickly realized is our knowledge on platforms like that is still, we're not sure how to use it yet completely, for its purpose. But I also think we must see ourselves as contributors to the data that gets aggregated, not as the consumers of it yet. Remember, like with AI, the thing is you're building knowledge base that can then be aggregated to your purpose. So when I search for something, I don't get what I need yet. So we have to constantly localize, specific, and as specific as my questions go and try to hone in, we are still the contributors of the information that needs to live there. So I think in our context, in a South African context, we still have a way to go. But I can see that the benefits of it in the future is going to be big, specifically around the data we're going to get from it, and specifically around automation, not to scare anybody away from AI replacing humans, because technology was never meant to replace humans. AI and technology is meant to bring you in a room so you can have a better conversation when you get there. So that when you get into a conversation with your colleague and you have to make a decision, you let the data guide it. Instead of spending the first 30 minutes, discussing the pros and cons, you've got it there. So it's easier to make that call. So I think there's some education that needs to happen around how we use it and how we integrate it into the tech we still build. And like will raise my hand up to say we still have a lot of learning to do in that space. Yeah.
Anyone else?
We are huge ChatGPT and AI in my house. My kids, my family and I, we like read up on all the books. Like
Yes.
I'm a go. The first thing I get up in the morning, I'm like, hey, ChatGPT, what do you think of X, Y, and Z? And everything, I'm like, hey, what do you think of this? And in fact, I was building something the other day. And I actually didn't realize, so I was saying to Toby, I didn't realize I'm a shareholder in the company actually that she's talking about. And it just suddenly struck as she was talking about something. And I was actually saying to my husband, hey, can I actually build X, Y, and Z? I'd like to put this together. And he said, oh, no, you don't have to do this. Tell AI to do it for you. And I was like, really? Okay. And I actually went, and it was the most fascinating process. So I was pulling together a third company I'm actually in the process of building. So I have a full-time company, but I've got 3 other companies I run. But they're actually pro bono. I don't get a profit from them. But I hope I do get a profit from this one. I don't know if I do yet. I don't think I do.
I'm glad to bring you both to the table
I
to
don't
discuss
think I
this
do,
conversation.
So I actually had asked AI to get a logo together for me. And they said, okay, so give me a few options. Who are you? And I said, well, I'm a bit quirky. I'm a bit fun. Like I am a bit of these things. And what colors do you like? And I put all my interests into AI. And I must say, I was pretty impressed with the logo. It actually designed for me. Loved it. And then it came up with about, I think, 9 or 10 different options. And it was pretty close. And then the next day I'd actually said to him, hey, you know what? I love this logo. So let's try and see if we can fine tune it. And then I said, can you ask one of the guys in the office to please get together a website for me? He said, and I looked at him and I could see the energy leave his body. Was like, no, man, we've got better things to do than do websites for you. We like do real software design work here. Can you ask AI? And I actually went in and I got it together. And it actually did. So I must say there are huge potentials for women who, want to get together, put together companies, but where I do have an issue and something that I am quite alive to and something that I do advocate against when it comes to AI is that we have to ensure that the people who are building it, and all of us have to be alive to this. We have to be intentional and conscious. It cannot be people who are not intentional. So there are not enough women. There are not enough women of color. There are not enough people who are tin swallows, who come from the township areas, who come. So when that data is being built and the data is being gathered and the preferences are being put together, we are not being taken into consideration. So hence why when you travel abroad and you're trying to go through a machine, it doesn't recognize you. It's not sure about the texture of your hair. And hence why you are asked not to cover your hair, to take off weaves and to take off all of those things, and can be quite alarming simply because the people who are putting together that data doesn't think about that when the algorithms are being built in, because they're putting together that data for themselves and for their immediate friends and family. So that's the only thing that we have to watch and guard against is the biases. That bothers me a lot.
Well, Marilyn, I mean, you started this segment and mentioning AI, so I'm going to let you wrap it. And I know that this is something you're quite passionate about: media, information, communication, technologies, and also inclusivity in digital transformation. So you have a last word on AI and this very important point that I think as the continent will disinclude us if we're not intentional about being a part of creating.
There's some times where I'm Marilyn, the entrepreneur. I have SARS issues. I have this. I have the accounting hat on sometimes. I have the marketing hat, all of that. And deep down, I'm still that techie as well. And the world of AI and what it can do in transforming even my business offerings is very exciting for me in terms of going out, knowing what problem I'm solving for, and going out and creating tech, right, quicker because it's low code, and allowing my customers to test it because the effort is minimal. We've got the developers, we've got the BAs to just do it quickly and customer, you had that problem? There it is. So in terms of making me agile, as an IT enterprise, and once again through that and through that adaptation of AI, getting that customer to actually use it, because I offer it for free. Remember how Gmail and Google started? It was for free. And then once we were hooked, now we have to pay 99 Rand. But that's the possibilities that it offers. And then at a grassroots, in terms of the Tin Swallows, it's about us once again solving the problem around, Shemani and I were having a conversation earlier around how do we get onto the grassroots, our local municipalities. Dombi and I were talking about how we are both from the townships and we have homes in the townships that we hardly go to. And how do we transform those homes into digital hubs or an exchange? And the amazing part about how it can start. I'm from Eldorado Park. She's from Shemaine said Wentworth. So if everybody was to convert their home into a hub, an AI hub, right, and do their part, and over time we end up having competitions between ourselves and create a sort of excitement and ecosystems at a grassroots level. That's how we're going to get those biases, to basically overcome those biases at all levels, because what we find is that we live our lives, our suburbia lives, our kids are exposed to these things. They show us more things than we IT people. Sometimes I look at my daughters and I'm like, who's in IT between you and I? Because, they ventured, but let's not leave the Tin Swallows behind. And it's amazing that, Ntombi and I had this conversation, and that's how we're going to make the impact far more greater in that respect.
I think that's so powerful. Let's take a short break. We'll come back with more. Her seat at the table. Coming up, the 2024 UN Women's theme is Investing in Women. The next panel discussion discusses how this is not just an issue of social and economic importance, but a human rights issue.
The confidence that you have to test something and fail forward, that's the language we need to give to our children.
Yes.
We need to give it to them.
Inspired by the 2024 UN Women's theme, this panel discussion seeks to highlight why gender equality remains the greatest human rights challenge, and why investing in women is a human rights imperative and cornerstone for building inclusive societies, and why progress for women means progress for us all. I mean, you've heard this, ladies, UN Women declaring that investing in women is not just an economic issue. It's not a social important issue. It's a human rights issue. So I wonder, to what extent do you believe, and in your experience have seen, African women and girls being included in society? Doctor?
I'll just paint a scenario. If you look at girl and boy children in the townships, girl falls pregnant. Who gets left behind there? She then has to already, just that there's a lopsidedness there, where the girl has to then stay behind, and look after the child, or in fact, even that 9 months, the boy gets ahead. So my view is that we need to look at those and highlight those and ensure that and become intentional, because we know what could befall a girl child for whatever reason. We then need to make sure that we as the leaders, hold our girl children, because we understand what could befall them, and actually ensure that they're protected, they are brought in, supported, trained, and create an enabling environment for them to succeed despite the challenges that they go through, because they're girl children.
From policy making to, private institutions, are we really creating a reality in which young women and girls are supported, Wasima?
So, again, I do believe in incremental change. I think we are far off from being able to, include female women more in policy making. But I do want to say, I listen to the younger girl, the voices of the younger girl, and I think they have so much power. They have this radical confidence and clarity in terms of what they want to go out to achieve. And I believe it's possible. But again, to come back to it, I do believe they need the language to equip them to be able to influence policy. They don't have that yet, and they get it from us. They get it from engaging more with us.
Explain what you mean by that, because you've mentioned it twice. What do you mean by the language?
So what I'm referring to earlier on, we had an offline conversation around like an interview process that Charmaine was referring to, like an interview process that was followed, and it was technology that guided it, but it literally gave people, using this as an example now, it gave you 10 minutes to answer a specific amount of questions, and the type of questions that were asked to the women sitting there, like they didn't have the context to answer something around, a geopolitical context. The question was around what's the political context, and this woman doesn't know. She's completely skilled. She's got everything needed to get the job, but she doesn't understand the geopolitical context. So for me, the language is when we get into a room, the types of things we discuss, again, like sitting around the table with your parents or with adults, that equips you to move into the next phase and actually just have conversations, not even like deep, higher grade PhD type questions, like just to have a conversation, to be able to put words to your narrative or your vision. I think, and the confidence to do so, even if you don't have the lexicon, but you have the comprehension. I think that's when I say give them the language, it is give them the confidence to speak their truth. And there's this concept, and I always say, like in the corporate space, I experience a lot of men having the ability to get things confidently wrong. But they go, they do it. They're like confident, and you believe it, and I love it. I think it's a lesson we can learn. Is like the confidence that you have to test something and fail forward, like Charmaine mentioned earlier. Fail forward. That's the language we need to give to our children.
Yes.
We need to give it to them. And one great example, it always gives me chills, is we had an incident, I think most people know about it. It was at one of the schools, and it spilled into multiple schools, where a girl was told to brush her hair in a certain way, like tame her hair, basically. She was natural. She had a natural afro, and she was asked to comb it back, tame it down. And she basically took up, she protested along with other members in the school. I'm not sure if it's a common story, but what they did was they had to change the policy, not change she didn't change her hairstyle. They changed the policy of the school to say, actually, if we're talking about D&I, if we're talking about inclusion and understanding that we're working with diverse people, physically, culturally, everything, how do we make sure that we incorporating that diversity in the policies of the spaces where they're going to operate? So I think small things like that little girl she wasn't little, I think she was in grade 10, but she was equipped with a language to influence policy. Okay. And similarly, I think our responsibility is to say, and it's not just about ICT, but our responsibility as leaders in spaces where we are influencing change, is to say, how do we bring the girl child and boy child, like we said earlier, how do we bring them along? And like for me, visually, what this plays out is we had all of our kids sitting here now listening to us. Yeah. Like, it's a small example, but we had them here sitting with us, listening to what we are saying, so that they go out, listen to the message, and however they internalize it, they've got a language. They've got a different level of thinking. I think that's important.
I think that's so great. And I want to ask about access to education, employment, and opportunities in that context, because I think you can take two people from different socioeconomic backgrounds, different genders, different races, both qualify with the same BSc, into the workforce, but one is somehow steps ahead of the other. And oftentimes we'll find that the male counterpart, because of a lot of the reasons that you're talking about, is far ahead of the other. So what is the current state that we're in, and what can we start to do to, bridge some of those gaps? Marilyn?
Sure, it's showing them, like not telling them, but actually showing them. It's amazing. I've actually taken a decision to really focus more on engaging and co-creating with my staff members, which are younger people. And I find that through doing that, like walking into a meeting, having a virtual meeting, them listening, the language that's being spoken by my peers. What I find fascinating about that is that, when I have an internal meeting, and I saw this one's screen, it showed that she researched salient points. What does the word salient means, right? Because she heard it in a meeting that I exposed her to, right? And also them walking into a meeting whereby I once again got pulled by a female in one of the pharmaceutical companies that said, no, come present your company. And them seeing me present and hearing me present and giving each and every one of them an opportunity to have a section where they present, but there's a certain tempo that I'm maintaining and clarity where everybody, and you can see our youth is hungry to be led, to be shown how to do it.
So I wonder, everyone watching and to our panelists here, how many of us were told when we were growing up as little girls that we talked too much and that's not the way young ladies behave, right? And this taboo that exists around being a girl with a voice or a girl in her own authority, right? And I just wonder about, in the African context, how far we're seeing this shift so that women can be more strong and brave and fearless without being discouraged from a very young age. Because ultimately that then puts people in leadership positions. That changes the way history is going to be documented. So let's talk a little bit about that, Charmaine, the resistance, the kind of taboo, even fear of a little girl, a young woman, a strong female leader.
I think the thing that's missing consistently in the home, in the school environment, out in the playground, in the sports field, in the workplace, is a safe, conducive environment. What we fail to do consistently, we let our kids down, we let friends down, we let workers down, we don't call things out. So when we're in a workroom, we're in a meeting, and somebody says, oh, Charmaine, stop being a bully. Oh, Charmaine, you're being so bossy. The first thing you should say is, hang on, have I ever heard you called John bossy?
Yeah.
Why do those labels of bossy, moody, why do they only apply to Charmaine?
Emotional.
Charmaine, stop being so emotional.
Yeah.
I've never in my life, in my 30 over some years, probably 32, 33 years working in the ICC space, I've never observed a male counterpart being called, moody or bossy or get over yourself. And something I've never observed as well. And I see women do it so beautifully. And it's something that we need to teach young people in this space as they come in. When young girls join our spaces, the one thing that we need to teach them about is that when you come into a space and you feel disrespect and you feel afraid and you feel that you are not being seen or you're not being heard, try and find somebody you can go and share that space with, because I come from that space where for years in the workspace, I was bullied, I felt traumatized, I felt unseen, I felt unheard. And a lot of my growth in my early years was actually, stagnated. And I look at that young girl, I look at that girl who was so scared, who was so afraid. And I feel so much, I just feel so much sadness for that girl because she could have been so much more and she could have given so much more. And I also look at the adults, and I wonder what could they have done to step in. So when I'm in a board meeting and I'm chairing a board meeting, or I'm leading a board meeting, and I look around at the table and I see a young girl and I see a young boy and I see them sitting in the corner and I say, why don't you guys make up space? Let that person shoe in next to us. Come and sit down. And often a second thing that happens, we all let it go because we don't pay attention in meetings. We never listen. We don't look for body language. We don't listen out. We just plow ahead in meetings. Oftentimes somebody says, maybe we should actually hold it on a Wednesday, and everyone continues. And then John says, what about Wednesday? And then everyone says, John, that's actually a brilliant idea. And then the chairperson doesn't stop and say, hang on, Pubby, did you just 5 minutes ago say Wednesday? So Pubby, let's come back to you. Can you continue with your theme around Wednesday? Right. I think it's those little subtle biases that we struggle so much with that just eradicates everything. So for me, for a young person coming into the environment, seek out somebody who you trust, who when your gut tells you this doesn't look right, go with your gut. And if you feel there's something that doesn't feel right, go with that. And also as adults in the work environment, if you have long tenure in the environment, watch out for those little subtleties. If you see somebody shrinking, if you see somebody struggling, do something about it, because not everybody comes from a home where there's confidence. Many of us Tintswalas came and we often, suffered from, this feeling of I'm lucky to be, and there's many youngsters who are coming. The second big issue, Pubby, is education. Yeah. Remember, I went to a government school where, so much of my education was it was appalling. It was awful. There were just so many things that I was not taught. There were so many things I had to also Google. To this day, by the way, I still Google so many words. I think, goodness, what is that word?
All the time.
And
that's okay.
And it's okay, by the way. It's okay.
It's constant learning.
It's constant learning. There's things my son says, and I say, boy, hang on, I've got to check ChatGPT. Can you just repeat that? Yeah. So I think the amazing thing is we have access to these tools, and young people shouldn't have to ever feel they're not good enough. I think we've got to constantly give out that message, and my only appeal to all young people, go out into your neighborhoods, go out into your townships. Where you can, there are lots of libraries. What we've done now, we've gone out to any libraries in the townships and rural areas. We've converted them into digital spaces. We have lots of massive open online content, MOOCs. So look at Cisco online services. Lots of these services and content is free. Go online. There's Microsoft services. There's Google online services. Go and track down and find We Think Code. What We Think Code does, which is very different, Nyari and the team, the CEO and the team, actually look for children like myself who came from nothing, who had nothing. You don't have any opportunities. Your family has got no money to send you anywhere, but you are very smart. And you do show ability. You're very smart when it comes to math, to science, and there's something very special about you. They put you through a boot camp for 2 years and they fund you completely, even giving you a stipend. Look for those services just again to give yourself that added assurance, because it's not often about your technical capabilities. I know I suffered for a long time just from not speaking up. And that's what holds you back in the workplace. It's not because you don't have the technical capabilities, just because you doubt yourself, you're a shadow, you always in the background when the board meeting starts, you sit at the door, you're not in anyone's vision, you're not out there. So I think if we can just teach our youngsters how to, and then of course our education system is appalling. It is appalling. I don't know how many times to just say that, but we're not going to fix it right now. We're not going to fix it today. But if you can use the services online to get beyond that, just try and find a library, find something where you can get online to improve your education. You're already a few steps ahead.
Layers, hurdles, barriers.
You've got to know yourself. You've got to know your strengths and play to your strengths. Okay. And I think that is what has helped me. I knew that, I like innovating. I like adrenaline. I like, you know what I mean? So as you know yourself, and it's also important to take your time. Take your time in creating your career. There's a saying that says, tails you win. More often than not, we win at the tail end of our career. So, this wanting to be quick and doing things fast and, you know what I mean, be the first, nothing wrong with it. But there's also merit in taking your time, learning yourself. We've spoken about, coming from environments that were not enabling, where you were told to shut up, and no, you can't say that. You have to first live unlearn that to say, actually, I have a voice. You heal that inner child that was suppressed, and then you come through and, you empower yourself. And actually, it's called mothering your inner child. You learn to mother yourself, to say, yes, my inner child was like this, but now that I'm older, who am I? So the self-discovery, and we need to teach, younger people to actually come through that, because they've also probably come through, situations where, suppress them.
I think, in South Africa, we're so dynamic, multicultural. And from the fact that we're multicultural, the language barrier is so evident in the boardroom and becomes such a big barrier, because how do we conduct meetings in English, right? And also in us speaking the English language, there's an accent that comes based on whether I'm Tswana, whether I'm from Durban, whether I'm from Eldorado Park. There's an accent that comes. And for me, one of the first things was to overcome just the accent, and people saying, why do you speak like that? And sometimes I got to a point early on in my career where I would speak with the accent just for fun, just to trauma. So some people would be like, oh, you're traumatizing me. I would do that just for fun, to get a kick out of, because it from the articulate person that you are to that accent, it also challenges stereotypes, right? Because there's a stereotype associated with a particular accent. And to make people realize that as I'm sitting here, I can switch and be that. And that's part of my heritage. That's part of who I am. And to that young person who's transitioning from a government school and going, from a government school all the way to University of Cape Town, right? And you're going to study what? Information systems. Are there computers at your school? No. First week, you have to, you have an assignment. Your school, firstly, by the time you'll have assignments, probably in April. But here, the pace is quick, right? So firstly, adjusting just to the pace is an issue. And then the fact that now you have to pretend like you've seen a computer. Back then it was the floppy disk, right? I remember the first assignment I was asked, I was paired with this guy, Mkolisi, and he said, let's start. And I'm thinking, I don't know where to put this thing. And I gave him attitude. I was like, no, you do it. And I watched as he put it in. And it comes down to also that creativity and that grit to say, I don't know, but I'm gonna watch and learning how to adapt and navigate. And also, once you graduate, and I mean, the first month just in varsity for somebody coming from a rural or township school, Excel. There was a guy that was on fire in terms of his laptop. For me, the greatest achievement was just being in final year with him. And knowing that I'm going to graduate it. We didn't start off the same, but we are graduating and entering the world of employment. There's a lot more that I had to overcome compared to you.
So with the way that we've kind of set out and painted a picture of where we are in South Africa, in Africa, we have a long way to go, right? And we have this young cohort who's watching you and now is quite inspired. Oh, you went through that too. Okay, I can do it. What advice do you have to the young person who'd like to be a tech entrepreneur, a medical technology entrepreneur, somebody in the ICT and leadership space? So what advice would you have? I'll start with you, Wasima.
So I'll start with continuous improvement. It's a notion that we have in software development as well. You're never finished with your code. You're constantly improving it. And I think we're the same thing. We're wired in the same way. You need to learning is an important part of your growth. Like you need to adapt. So I'm a starter. I don't like finishing something off. I have an idea. I want to set people up. I'm going to define what needs to be done, and I'll watch it through the end. But I understand my role. So I think understanding your role in a the space that you want to play in, that's important. But constantly improve. Constant learning. It doesn't mean you need to go and get new degrees all the time. There are shorter learning things that you can do, because just like we're building in Agile these days, it's important that you do shorter pieces of learning so that you can immediately apply it. So I think constant learning. I think mentorship is a non-negotiable. Find someone that you adore, admire, whatever, and just and find a few people and have the courage to walk up and ask. Even if you go online, you'd be amazed at the amount of people on LinkedIn that have reached out to me, my age, women of my age, like in different industries, that said, can we like get together once a week and that type of thing? And it just helps to have that soundboard, to have that conversation, to learn the language of another sector. So find your mentors.
Thank you. Shamet?
So, life has so many iterations. I've been like figuring it out for 32 years. And then suddenly last week, I realized what I want to do in life. And then suddenly there was a light bulb that this is what I've been trying to do my whole life. And the moment that came together, everything else fell into place. So just don't be frustrated with where you're at in life, because what you're meant to do will never ever be taken away from you. What's yours can never be taken away from you. Stay in your lane. I know when you're young, you always want to follow the path of what is my friend doing? What is my neighbor doing? Like who on TikTok or who's doing what on LinkedIn? And you always want to aspire to be somebody else. That's okay. That's really, really nice. Like what always fascinates me, I'm not on any social media. I'm on WhatsApp. I'm nothing else. Often when I go to events, people are like, can I get you on LinkedIn? Can I? And I say, I'm so sorry, I'm not on any of those things, but you can hit me up on LinkedIn, or you can hit me up on WhatsApp. I'm not on anything else, but somehow people always track me down. So I don't feel that pressure of social media.
Yes.
I don't feel the pressure of having to look at anyone or follow anyone, and I don't know who's anybody on anything. And I am the happiest person in the world. So don't feel that pressure to have to put yourself out there, because again, what is meant for you is going to find you. So focus on continuous learning. Always go out there. Always be curious. Always ask questions. And I know that it's the exact opposite of what you're being taught at home, especially if you're from the rural area, but always ask why. And if you can, I was this child who used to read like the back of like sugar packets and everything. I read everything. Like I would actually, like as the car went by, I'd read the stop. Oh, STOP. Oh, like, oh, that says like, BYE. Read every single thing you can get your hands on. If you on the bus and there's somebody left a magazine or left a paper, read it. You'll never go wrong from reading. And genuinely, the thing that brings you happiness is the thing that's going to make you lots of money. Like it's not the thing that you should go looking for money for. The thing that's going to bring you money, and this has proven true in my life, the thing that I get up every day and it brings me joy is the thing that always ends up working out. But that thing that I chase for money, oh my goodness, I lose that money in a day.
Yeah.
So just, go after things that bring you joy. Find, and again, lastly, find your tribe. Like genuinely find your tribe and stick to your tribe. Stay with them. Continuous learning. What's yours, no one will ever take away from you. Don't chase social media. Look for examples. Look for things. Look for people who are doing great things. It's great to look for aspirations and things, but don't put yourself under pressure.
Oh, that's so powerful. It always makes me think of my science teacher. I was in standard 10.
Yeah.
And he pulled me out from the back of the lab and he said, Babalo, you will never get anywhere in life if you're talking like that all the time. And I always think, well, look where I am now, Prof, from talking. It's a thing that I loved. Obviously, we need to be appropriate in appropriate spaces, but absolutely, the thing that you would do it for free is the thing that then
It's
becomes
a thing that
so
brings you money.
attractive
And
to
you know what also I think, especially for us who come from townships,
Yeah.
you were often told the first thing that you did where you failed somebody, we were often told your life is over. And I recently graduated some ladies from Kenya who had fled from Somalia, from, all the war-torn countries, from Tigray in, Ethiopia. And they ended up in a shelter called Refugee, where they actually did beading. And then we put in some technology and stuff for them. Women as young, girls, babies, little kids, babies as young as 13, 12, having their second kid already. Because when you are actually fleeing from unrest and from war, people are going to take advantage of you along the way.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating is that women and our youth, young girls, young boys who come from situations and circumstances of adversity are so resilient. They have this, I'm going to try again. These young mothers are graduating in cybersecurity. They are graduating in cyber resilience. They are now, going out there and working in fintech, with 2-3 kids at 14, 15. So don't give up.
Yeah.
You can do it. It's possible.
You can overcome. Dr. Ntombi.
I think to the young ones and to women in particular, it's okay to take your time. It's okay for them to take that time. We live in an era that romanticizes doing things quickly. Take your time. And more often than not, the stage you're in at the moment, at whatever time, will probably also dictate what you need to, or what you need to learn or what you need for the next phase. Sit in it, learn whatever you can from there, but also as you are in there, plan for your next phase. It's never too late to redirect yourself. It took me being 15 years of being an emergency medical doctor. And whilst I was there, I thought, I need more, then went on and did a master's in business. Whilst I was there figuring out, I thought, actually, we're going towards a technology-centered world. Let me go on and do technology. So reinvent yourself as much as you want. The world is your oyster.
Goosebumps. That's
Yeah.
Pivot.
Yeah.
Be agile. It's okay.
Exactly.
It's okay. Thank you, Dr. Ntombi. Marilyn.
For me, it's like, 2024, South Africa, we're in a different time from way back in the late 90s and early 2000s when we were graduating from high school. University entrance, it's full for kids that are great performance from the schools that they're from. Our economy cannot absorb the amount of graduates that we have. So as parents, as guardians, what do we do now? Because education was the key, right? How do we prepare our children, our young people? Think creatively around, okay, what other options are there? We need a reset in terms of how we are preparing our young ones. I think for my kids, I'm a bit to their shock, I'm a bit of whatever you feel you are great at, I will support you. So if you decide to be a caterer, I always say that, or a cleaner, you must be the best cleaner and you must love what you do. And I think it because of how the world is structured, they like, this woman. But that is how we need to start resetting if there's going to be opportunities for the next layer of young people.
This has felt like MBA. It's felt like a sisterhood. It's felt like so many different, beautiful, wonderful, engaging things. And that's what Her Seat at the Table is all about. I want to honor each and every one of you for the wisdom that you've brought and shared with us today, and extend my absolute gratitude to you for making time to come and have a seat at her table.
Thank you,
Bobby.
Bobby.
Thank you very much.
You know, being a woman entails so many interconnected and transcending spaces. You know, the way you treat a mother, a sister, or your daughter, it all sets the tone for how you will create the future for yourself and other women. We'd like to honor the wisdom, lessons, and gifts that we've been so vulnerably and generously shared with today. And we hope that this platform really encourages all women out there to do the same with the women in your lives. Remember your light. Remember your beauty. It all shines brightest in the way that you treat others, in the way that you lead, in the way your intellect, your creativity, and your innovation is revealed through your character. Happy International Women's Day, and don't forget to always take up your seat at the table. Make sure you follow us on social media at The Innovator Trust for more updates and highlights from Her Seat at the Table. Bye-bye. We would love to continue the conversation with you online. We encourage you to make use of the following in order to be featured on our socials throughout the course of our International Women's Day celebrations. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Innovator Trust. Then subscribe to our official YouTube channel. You can also share your tweets or post on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter. Our account is at Innovator Trust, and use the hashtags #Her Seat at the Table, #Innovator Trust, and #International Women's Day.